Okay, everybody take your seats. Thank you. Okay, everyone, good evening and welcome to the Duluth Community Services regular meeting of the Board of Directors on this date, May 18, 2022. This meeting is now called to order. Roll call. Mr. Bowman.
Here.
Mrs. Carroll.
Here.
Mr. D'Alessandri.
Here.
Mrs. Rawson.
Here.
And Roberts is here. Would everybody please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, first item on the agenda, item number B, authorizing on-site and virtual boarding committee consideration and adoption of resolution number 22-06, authorizing on-site and virtual board and committee meetings pursuant to AB 361. Motion to approve? Second?
Second.
All in favor, Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Ms. Carroll?
Aye.
Mr. D'Alessandri? Lawson?
Aye.
Roberts? Aye. Unanimously approved. Okay, item number C, Sheriff's Report. Unfortunately, Deputy Perez is not with us here this evening. So at the board meeting, we will also include a May report. Okay, item D, public comments. Jessica will be the time auditor. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. You will be given with a 1-minute warning from me. Jessica, do we have anybody that wishes to speak from Zoom?
Well, we have several people who have joined. So I'll just go down the list. Scott Shaw, if you'd like to address the board. Or would you?
They have to put a bridge in.
Well,
There's something flashing there.
Okay, we have one, looks like we have one hand, an individual by the name of Dave. Okay. Dave, can you hear us?
Yes,
Okay, can you give us your last name, Dave?
Django.
Okay, and you have 3 minutes, sir. And I'll give you a 1-minute warning by lifting up my hand with the one showing, okay?
No, I don't want to speak. I'm okay. Thank you.
Oh, you are okay. Okay, very good, thank you. Okay, and it doesn't appear that we have any other hands up at this time. All righty, and it doesn't appear that we have anybody on site this evening.
correct.
Okay, very good. Then we will proceed with agenda item number E, which is the annual audit. Robert?
Thank you very much. I'd like to make a couple of comments first and then introduce our CPA for the district. But first, I'd like to say that this has been an unusual year. And that goes without saying because we all know what we've been through with COVID. But what some of us don't fully realize, I know Jim does and I know the board does, but I want to reiterate it, that the FEMA process has been a very difficult process. And it falls largely on one person's shoulders and another person's shoulders who also bears that burden. And I'd like to thank him, Jim, for his work with that, because I think he's done a great job leading the effort to make sure that the funds that we deserve have come to us. But our large finance office has had to bear the brunt of much of the work for FEMA. That includes documentation, that includes a whole bunch of things that relate to making sure the books are the way they are, and that the requests are what they need to be, and that they match with the work that's been done. And despite all of that had to be done this year, there was the usual day-to-day stuff, the payroll, the just paying the bills. And if you all look at that each month, you see that there's a very large number of bills that get paid, they all have to be paid, they're paid on time. So all of that had to be done by this finance office of one person. And so I want to just say that yes, this audit is coming to us very late, but understand that not only was it FEMA, but FEMA times 2, because then we had the appeal, and the amount of data they requested for that was just extensive. And again, that fell on this large office that we have of one person. So I want to just thank Teresa for all her hard work, and just to recognize that this would have been an unusual year anyway without FEMA, but it was complicated even more. And when we look at the amount of money we received from FEMA, and as one of the supervisors said to me, you got all that money in 2 years? He was very surprised, and we did. And that is largely related to the data that we were able to provide them in the format that they wanted. So I thank you very much for that. Having said that, it also complicated our audit because there were components of the audit that related directly to FEMA. You'll hear about that from our audit. Mr. Michael Zizzi is a partner with the firm of Leaf and Cole. He's been working on our books for a number of years now. I think it's about 3 years or 4 years. 4 years, that's right. And I think you'll be very pleased with his report. I will say in advance of it that it's a clean report. No stains on any of the pages. So without further ado, I'd like to ask Mr. Zizzi to go ahead and present the annual audit. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to confirm that you can all hear me before I start. So,
Yes.
okay, very good. I spent a fair amount of time with the Finance Committee going through this, and so I'm going to run through my presentation fairly quickly because I don't want to spend as much of your time as we did previously. That's what committees are for. But I did want to reiterate what was just said, and that was kind of the overriding theme of the Finance Committee meeting was the fact that because you operate so lean in your staff, that a staff of one is fine for your day-to-day operations, but once you add FEMA on top of that, it does become extremely burdensome. And so I did want to reiterate that point. So without further ado, if we could go to my first slide. And what I'm going to run through today with you is I'm going to cover the independent auditor's report, and I'm going to cover the cash flow statement. And I do that because I think it gives you an awful lot of information, and as I already indicated, in a brief amount of time. So on page 1 of the independent auditor is the independent auditor's report. The first paragraph indicates what it was that we audited, and we audited the statement of net position, the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position, the statement of cash flows, and the notes to the financial statements. The second paragraph indicates that management, again, management is responsible for the fair presentation of the financial statements. That includes the design, the implementation, and the maintenance of internal controls. The third paragraph indicates that my responsibility as the auditor is to express an opinion on those financial statements based upon our audit. That same paragraph also indicates the auditing standards that we followed. We followed auditing standards that are generally accepted in the United States of America. And as a California special district, we're also required to follow the state controller's minimum audit requirements. Those standards require that we plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance, but reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from misstatement. The fourth paragraph defines what an audit is, which is the performance of procedures to obtain the audit evidence. The procedures selected depend on auditor judgment, including our assessment of the risk of material misstatement due to error or fraud. In doing so, we consider the district's internal control and design procedures that are appropriate in the circumstances. We also evaluate the accounting policies used and the reasonableness of any estimates that are made. So your audit is a little bit different than everybody else's audit because we tailor our audit specifically to you and your circumstances. The fact, again, that you have one person that basically does all of your accounting, we have to adjust our auditing procedures to that because you just don't have the ability to have the separation of duties that other organizations might have that are operating with larger staff. The fifth paragraph and the last paragraph on page 1 states that affirmatively that we have obtained sufficient evidence on which to base our opinion. And if we turn the page to page 2, next slide, please. So this is the opinion paragraph. And so the opinion paragraph states affirmatively that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects and that they are in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. The seventh paragraph finally refers the reader to supplementary information, and this is information that is required by generally accepted accounting principles. That includes management's discussion and analysis and the schedules of the plan's proportionate share of net pension liability and the schedules of contributions to the pension plan. New this year, because we added OPEB benefits, are the schedule of changes to the district's net OPEB liability and related ratios and the schedule of contributions to the OPEB plan. While the MD&A contains information that is derived from the financial statements, it also contains details and analysis that are not found in the financial statements. We were not required to follow government auditing standards, nor did we report on internal control and compliance under the single audit this year, as the district did not earn in excess of $750,000 in federal financial assistance. The single audit requirements are driven by qualifying expenditures, not the cash receipts. Thus, we had a single audit in the previous year, but not this year. So now I'm going to jump to page 11, which is the cash flow statement, and I'm going to work my way from bottom to top. And so our cash and cash equivalents this year increased. I want to stress that they increased $179,990 as compared to a decrease in the previous year of $592,487, roughly a difference of approximately $770,000. That's roughly the reverse of what happened in the prior year. And the difference results from our operating expenses decreasing by $1 million from the prior year as a result of the disaster-related repairs that we undertook in the previous year. We also earned less interest income as a result of the interest rates paid by LAIF decreasing, and that's predominantly where our interest earnings are made. So my next slide, again, working my way up, details, we received $48,403 in interest earnings this year. And this gives you a breakdown of exactly where that was earned. And you can see, of course, the lion's share of that is in LAIF. And so while we did have slightly less cash held in LAIF throughout the year as a result of the expenditures over the past couple of years, the decrease in the rate also impacted the rate of return on investments. The next item is our deposits. So we continue to hold a large deposit related to the widening of Via Santa Rosa. We've held that forever at this point. In addition, we hold permit utility deposits. Our utility deposits increased by $4,000 this year, and our permit deposits increased by $1,600 this year, and that gives you the $5,600 increase that you see on page 11. I'll take the next two line items, which is our capital lease, both the interest paid on that and the principal portion. So each year, the districts makes semi-annual payments as part of the building purchase. Each year, in addition, the allocation to principal goes up, allocation to interest goes down, as you'd expect with any fully amortizing mortgage. And so this year we paid $42,021 in principal, we paid $11,932 in interest, and we have about roughly 4 years left to pay on that capital lease. Acquisition of capital assets. We spent a total of $27,404 for the year ended June 2021, and that relates to improvements that have been made to the room that you're sitting in. That includes tablets, TVs, and other items. Our disaster revenue of 406, 222 or 232 in disaster assistance, that's both federal and state. This amount is consistent with the previous year. In addition, we recognize $550,000 in bad debt expense as Cal OES denied our cost overruns. The last section is the cash from operations. We had cash used from operations that totaled $198,888. That's $907,000 less than the prior year, which is not surprising given the level of disaster assistance expenses in fiscal 2020. In the current year, we recognized $115,071 in disaster expenses. It is noteworthy that our cash received from customers increased by $73,000, while our payments to employees decreased by $39,000. Other items contributing to our operating loss are the accounting entries that are required by both the pension and OPEB accounting rules. That's what I had planned for you as far as the financial statements go. If you have any questions related to that, I'd be happy to address those. We also issued a management letter that we discussed yesterday. I had a couple of items there that I wanted to take just a moment to touch on. But if there's any questions related to the financial statements, I'd be happy to address those at this time.
Is at this time. Thank you.
All right, so hearing none, I'll move on to the management letter. We did issue 2 comments, and it's in direct relation to the discussion you were having before I started to speak. We had an issue regarding revenue and expense recognition that in examining and it really deals with the equity accounts and the fact that each year we have to make entries to the equity accounts in order to keep the various zones in balance, which adds an awful lot of complexity to the accounting that you do. It basically takes what your accounting should be and basically makes it 400% more difficult, because for each entry that you make, you've got to allocate it 5 different places. And so what happens over time is that oftentimes the equity accounts get out of balance. And so we made suggestions there as to making sure that we have a monthly reconciliation each month to make sure that that equity in total always reconciles back to the previous year. The second item we had issues with the bank reconciliations, and suggested that we have a second set of eyes to look to see that they are completed and look to see that they do actually reconcile between the bank and the set of books. And again, the real issue at hand here, and it's where you started your conversation, really all stems from, that Teresa has enough time to do her job and do it well. But when you throw FEMA on top of it, now she doesn't. And when you're, the priority obviously is when you're dealing with FEMA, you want to get the money when you can. And so you're dealing with deadlines and that has to take a priority. But something has to give. And so there were some cracks in the accounting this year. So that delayed us getting, the audit scheduled and of course, getting it concluded. So I just wanted to, in fairness, wanted to mention that to her, bring that to her attention, and hopefully make some positive suggestions as to how we can make improvements related to that on a monthly basis. Much easier to reconcile things if they're reconciled each month than to get to the end of the year and figure out it doesn't reconcile. And then you've got 12 months of information you've got to comb through, not to mention that it's usually 3 months after the year's ended before you figure that out. So now you're trying to remember what you did 15 months ago. So I've taken more of your time than I had intended. But again, any questions related to the audit or related to the management letter, I'd be happy to discuss those with you.
I have something. Mike, just to elaborate on what you said a little bit, if there is a electricity charge, okay, that then has to be broken down into each zone and assigned to each zone. And each zone has a different assignment percentage. So each month for an electricity charge to our office here, it has to be broken down that way. And every charge then has to be broken down in that way. Is that correct?
it's even more complicated than that. I mean, that is correct. But typically what happens is that the cash, you know, it gets paid out of, and we use Fund 10 as if it were a general fund. And so it gets paid out of there. So then, you know, not only do you have to record the expense to each of those funds, but then you've got to move the cash because each of the other zones has to reimburse the zone that paid it. And then you've got to, and if you don't, then you're moving equity. And so you have equity going back and forth literally 2 times every time you make a transaction, just to get the cash, the expenditure, and the fund balance right for each particular zone.
So simplifying this would entail not assigning this to different zones and treating this as one fund and then just paying out of that one fund.
Yeah, the zones have kind of outlived their, again, my humble opinion, have kind of outlived their necessity in the fact that, you know, your rates are set. You know, you might go, even though you collect in one particular zone, you might go 2 years without doing any improvements in that zone, even though you've collected funds on that zone and they've been built up. And, you know, if you know, you don't tend to look at, as you're doing a pavement project, you don't tend to look and go, well, does zone 5, you know, and I'm making zone numbers up, but does, you know, does zone 5 have enough money to do it? You go, no, you look at your pavement management system and you say, good management says we're going to fix the road in zone 5 and it'll get paid for eventually. So the fact that we take this and take each cost and break it down by each zone, I think has again outlived its usefulness.
So just to kind of summarize that, or at least to tell you that the finance committee, in looking at that and discussing this with you, had asked the management and finance to take a look at how we could simplify this and what would be the appropriate way to do that, how we might do that over time. And that may involve a variety of things to look at. We talked about that. There may be some legal issues. There may be some other things that relate to that, but we did ask you to look at that. And then we'll bring that back to the finance committee and bring that back here to see if there are any suggestions. We are just wasting a lot of time doing this. And in the end, it doesn't serve us very well. So we've asked them to look at it, come back and talk to us about that. Thank you, Mike.
You're quite welcome. It's been my pleasure to be with you this evening. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. Have a wonderful evening.
Any other-
Not about that. We're very pleased with the report. And but in the meeting, Mike said he likes to start with telling you this is a clean report. But apparently the way that the letter reads, that has to come at the end.
Sure.
So usually what I do is look at the last page first. But obviously that's what I'm interested in. So we're very pleased with that and very pleased with the work that finance has done, Teresa.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, everyone. Let's see, agenda item F, information only. The following items are intended for information purposes only. Financial statements, statement of investment policy. Directors, any comments or questions?
No.
None? Okay, then we will move on to G, consent calendar. Number 1, minutes of the April 2022 regular board meeting. 2, general fund claims for April 2022. 3rd, sheriff special tax claim for April 2022. And none for the purchase order. Directors, questions? No?
No.
Motion to approve?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Bowman?
Aye.
Carroll?
Aye.
D'Alessandri?
Aye.
Rawson?
Aye.
Roberts? Aye. Unanimously approved. Thank you, everyone. moving on. Next on the agenda, financial matters fiscal year budget 2022-2023. Mr. Emmons?
Let me just say, we did discuss this at the finance committee, and so I don't have to go back over it later on.
Okay,
And Jim will tell you that in fact, I'll just let him introduce it and explain it to you because he does a good job of that.
okay,
Okay, the next 5 items relate to the annual budget, something we do every year. We begin in May. It's really a prelude to your final adoption of the financial plan for next year, which comes at your June meeting. So the first item is a first reading of an ordinance, which is ordinance 2203. And just as an explanation, our revenues come from 2 sources. One is a special tax, which the voters voted on and approved many years ago, like last year. And that funds the sheriff's contract. Since it's a tax, you must each year renew that tax by passing a law, which is an ordinance. And so we're going to go through that process tonight. You're going to do first reading of that. And then at the June budget meeting, we'll open and close a public hearing so the public can give their comments if they wish. And then you will second reading and adopt. And that enables us to put that tax on the county tax. So we do that every year. But in 1998, the voters passed Proposition 218, which says that you can keep that tax, but you cannot raise it without a 2/3 vote of the people. So, which actually we more or less had that because that actually went on ballot once. And so to change something the voters did, we would still, regardless of 218, need to go to the voters for that. So that basically is the mechanics behind your special tax. So at this time, if there's no questions, I'll phrase the motion that you make to begin the process of passing this law. And that motion would be that you move that ordinance number 2203 be introduced by title only, that further reading be waived, you're not going to read it here, and that ordinance number 2203 be passed to second reading and public hearing at your regular meeting on June 15th of this year. And we'll take a second and a roll call.
So moved.
second, okay, all in favor, Bowman?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
D'Alessandri?
Aye.
Rawson?
Aye.
Roberts? Aye. Unanimously approved. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jim.
And the next 2 items are similar, but just again, as far as an explanation, there was no tax historically for the roads. It was a benefit assessment. And that's really what the auditor was talking about. That's, the zones in terms of our financials have really outlived their usefulness. Because what happened, this process actually had another month. We would have started this 25 years ago. They started this in April, because you had to give the proposed benefit assessment to every taxpayer in every zone. Okay, and tell them, this is what we're going to do in your zone this year. As a result of Prop 218, those benefit assessments were frozen. They cannot be raised without a 2/3 vote of the people. So that process that they went through, they would have like zone 1 and 2 come in, and people would say, don't raise my assessment, or we want more, or this and that, blah, blah, blah. Then they would come up with a number, all right? And then they go to zone 2. Says 1998, the number's frozen. So even if they came in and said, would you please resurface our roads, we'll pay for it. You can't do it. 2/3 vote of the people, okay, which is difficult. So what we're doing now is simply rolling forward. You have to impose the benefit assessment in order for us to put it on the property tax bill. And it's that same fixed number, right? But we still have to go through the motions because it's essentially a tax, even though it's called assessment. But you don't have to pass a law. You can do it by resolution. But you must have a public hearing. You must give notice. So what the next two items, personally, is resolution 2208 sets a hearing for the vote on the budget, because you've still got the expenditure side. Our revenue sheets are the same every year, except if we do FEMA and other things, okay? But it's the expense side that changes. So you need to hold a public hearing on that to let the public know that you're gonna pass a budget. So item number I would be adoption of resolution 2208, which sets the hearing for passage of the budget. And that can just be by minute motion, but it takes a roll call vote.
Second,
Second.
okay, Bowman.
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Alessandro.
Aye.
Rawson.
Aye.
Roberts, aye. Unanimously approved, thank you. Thank you,
And then
Andrew.
jumping to the next item, I
Sure.
explained it in more or less combined, but the law required that if you're going to have a benefit fee, that you tell the public in writing what it is you're proposing. So when they came in for zone one and zone two, they had a paper in their hand, okay? Here's what the district is considering for next year, and then they could discuss it with the board. That's still required, and so we have on at your table the written report that accompanies the budget showing how we intend to use these funds. And many of these aren't used during the year. It's basically maintenance funds that are set aside, and we listed in the written report which streets are covered by those funds. And so this would adopt the public hearing on the written report for your next board meeting. So this again takes a minute motion, it's the resolution, but it does take its financial roll call.
Okay. And second,
I'll second.
all in favor, Bowman.
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Alessandro. Rawson.
Aye.
Roberts, aye. Unanimously approved.
Just to point out there that if you look at that written report, you see that there is a listing on each area, but nothing above that, sorry, on any of the streets. That could be decided later by the engineering committee and the board, if you wanted to do something to, I just happen to have this El Viento Seco say,
Oh, yeah, that's
okay, that would be, okay, just as an example, right? So,
Yeah, with the goal.
that's right. That would then go to the engineering committee that would decide, and that would then come forward. So this doesn't necessarily say nothing's gonna happen there, just that this is the total amount that's designed.
And so as we go through the year, it comes up, there's a process, it goes like to engineering. David become a slurry,
Right.
and stuff like that. And then it goes to the board, and then the board, as the year goes by, allocates pursuant to this document that you're approving. It is basically a budget for the board of how you're gonna spend the money in
Right.
these zones.
Did you do the district budget as well? Did you mention that?
Primary?
Yeah.
The
Primary,
primary,
primary. is-
This one. District budget.
Oh, no, that's next.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No,
oh, here it is.
so we have to vote, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Then the next, the grand finale, here's the budget itself, okay? This is not a decision-making item. We've been working on this, Teresa's been working on it for months, probably. And we've reviewed it with the finance committee. It also came up in the meeting with our auditor. And one of the issues is the auditor, and he didn't say it as clearly as he said it to the committee,
Right.
is we have FEMAs And we have other business that we are conducting here besides just the sheriff and the roads. To give you an example, that benefit assessment that's frozen generates $2 million a year, and that's for the roads. Some of it goes to the road folks, some of it goes to administration, some of it goes for all the overhead, like one of the issues that Teresa had talked about is the insurance, you know. But if you look back at, and that's what Mr. Zizzi was really talking about, if we pulled the audit from last year and the year before, I mean, our budget's 2 million plus 300 for the sheriff, 2.3 million every year frozen. Yet if you look at our financial statements, the last FEMA was 3.2 million at least. And that was kind of divided between the years. And so if you look last year, I believe our income for the audit was over 4 million. So, and that's what he was pointing out in terms of our staffing, is that our finance department, which is a 10 by 8 room over there, okay? Sometimes their workload in 1 year goes from 2 million to like 4.3. And with this zone thing that we need to look into, every time, as Robert stated, every time she writes a check, she has to post it 6 times. And we've all done some accounting. And we know it's the posting that takes all the work. Writing the check is easy. Okay. So when she does payables, the total amount of work to just pay the monthly expenditures of the district takes 6 times longer than it would in a private company. So anyway, he's suggesting that we get additional help in that finance department. We're not sure yet what that should be and what it would look like, but we do have, there's an account which Teresa will get into, at the very bottom. They have done this for years, future planning or long-term planning, which is initiatives that come up. Just like we did have additional expense for all of this. We took some out of that. When we were first starting, these tablets were actually your tablets out in the field. We knew we wanted to change the way we did our road maintenance reporting. And so there were funds in that account that we don't know where we're going, but we're gonna, until we decide, actually go into a budget item. That's where we take the funds. So if we get a consultant, this was IT people, and we use a Willdan, and we use their IT department to help us. That mostly came out of future planning. So there's funds in there at all times, probably I think 40,000. If you look at the fund and the audit is our balance. So we've added 35,000 because we're always going to have FEMA. This district actually was founded to get FEMA money because it was originally just the HOAs. And they had a big disaster like in 75 or 4, I think. And everybody around here got disaster money, but not to lose because it was all HOAs and they weren't public. So that is what started it, is make a district and then you could apply for FEMA money. There wasn't even all FEMA then, but it was, assistance. And these rains come and the roads get washed out. And so this is the largest one we've tried to do. But the way we did this is we happened to get a break because there was a fight between the governor and the president, which gave us about 6 weeks that they were fighting over whether to sign the declaration to get the money. And so during that time, we said, let's look at everything, because usually in the disaster, you don't have a lot of time. And so you have to give your list of what was damaged and turn it in. Well, we had plenty of time and we checked everything, every culvert, whatever, and grew our list to 3.2 million. And we got it. this is the biggest one this district's ever done, but I think what's gonna happen is now we have this record keeping system. So that was all done by hand in the field, driving around. But our record keeping system, we now know we can put in, what's the condition, what was the condition of our culverts. Then we can run the guys out and check them quickly and then say, oh, look here, these were all damaged, we can prove it. Because we've got photographs of before. And so if anything, we're gonna get more. So to assume that this one FEMA kind of wiped us out for a couple of years and wiped out finance and we were slow getting all these things done, is not being realistic, because the next disaster is right around the corner. And we still got another year of cleaning up and collecting another, what, $1 million we gotta get? So there's still a lot. Yeah, and another thing that I thought about after the finance meeting, and I haven't even discussed it with Teresa, the whole system has changed, the FEMA system. It used to be like every other system, all paper. And even when I came here, that was 4.5 years ago, anything related to FEMA hit my desk like this. You have to read these letters and you have to sign them and you need to reply and all that. With this disaster, they changed everything. It's 100% electronic. There is no paper. So the financial side had been electronic to some degree, but FEMA has completely redone their system. So Teresa has to work electronically with FEMA 100%. But then they took all the administrative, all the field stuff, all the engineering stuff, and it goes into the FEMA portal. Now, when that started 3 years ago or whatever, it hit my desk. So how do we do this time? There's no more paper coming in. I looked over here and said, well, heck, she's doing it anyway on the finance side. Let's just have her do that. Which this is news to the finance committee. I hadn't thought of that. So what it used to be, Teresa doing her part and Cher doing her part and Ron doing his part, it all ends up in that finance room. So whenever Ron has engineering, she has to take it to Teresa, or he has to take it to Teresa, and she puts it into the right place. And then, of course, by doing that, if that's a project number 34, okay, she's still monitoring the numbers related to the cost and the amount they're awarding us. But all that engineering stuff is running in there parallel with it. And that used to be on my desk or in the front desk. So I'd forgotten. Anyway, we need to analyze this because it's coming. And the other thing, a month ago, the state of California is not messing around. We will comply with this organic waste. We have to assume that we're going to, and that is going to have a significant impact here. And you're all as taxpayers, and you're the only taxpayers of Duluth in this room, but you five are going to pay for that. But it doesn't mean there isn't going to be we don't do much of anything. You'll see R&R just handles it. And once in a while, somebody complains and we got to deal with it. And then we deal with the rates once a year. So we've never, this district has really never had anything to do with trash collection in terms of impacting our organization. That's going to change because there's going to be all kinds of reporting requirements. And we've got to look in 3% of the trash cans and send out letters and fine people. And they didn't mention the fine, but that's right around the corner. So this could be huge. So I don't know where it's going to go. We'll find out as we're just stepping through. But anyway, we need to take a look at finance staffing. And we can work. So that's the only major change in this budget. We put 35,000. That might be a part-time person, and I don't know, but I'm just kind of alerting you. That's the key item here, where we're saying we need some more money. And I haven't had to do that with you since I've been here, but that is an increase in the budget. Everything else, Teresa now, then that to go over budget and take it from there.
All right, thank you. Well, I'm not, if everybody would go to the second page in the budget, I'd like to start there first, if you don't mind. So it's the general and administrative expense summary that lists all the administrative expenses, in general. I'm not going to go over nobody wants to go line item by line item. I mean, you can if you would like to, but what I was going to do is hit the highlights that I think may be worth noting. But please stop me at any time, ask questions, whatever you would like, it's fine. So what you're seeing here, of course, in the first two columns is our proposed budget for 2023. The second column is the percent change from the actual annualized, which is the column right after it. And then the last two columns are last year's adopted budget and the increase in that budget. The bottom line is the increase from the actuals that they're coming in at. So on those last two columns, you can see there's an overrun of 10.38% if you look at everything as a whole.
Excuse me, Teresa, I don't believe that we've got on the screen.
Oh, we're on the budget.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. No worries. I'm sorry. I wasn't even looking up.
Going with colors.
There we go.
There you go. Hold on. Okay. There you go. Anyway, the last two columns, you can see the budget was 824. It came in at 909. So that's an increase of 10.38%. A lot of that, we've got, those are in maybe 5 or 6 different categories. And the first one, of course, is wages, came in higher. We budgeted 311, they came in at 334. What that difference is cost of living, sick and vacation payouts. We had quite a bit of overtime, as you can imagine with FEMA. So there was overtime hours. So that's basically what's making up that difference in those two. Now, if you go across to what we're proposing for this fiscal year, everything you're going to see a lot of 7.90% increasing. That is the Bureau of Labor Statistics that we have to go by what our cost of living increases are for annually for employees. For example, the previous year it was 3.6%. Well, inflation, as we all know, is kind of going crazy right now. So the cost of living came in at 7.90%. So in general, if we didn't know otherwise, if something was happening to make that come in at a different rate, we use 7.9% as a standard going down all of the accounts. So anyway, getting back to wages, all we did is increase it 7.9%.
Which is our MOU.
Yeah.
But we negotiated that, and I think you all approved it.
In fact, when it was 2%.
Now, if you go down to the next one is you'll see GASB 68 and 75 actuary. Well, you remember, if you do remember when Mike or Azizi was speaking, he said we had additional OPEB reporting requirements. So we have to pay to go out to a third-party actuary and develop that report every year. So we budgeted $1,500 last year. We ended up paying $4,000 because of that OPEB reporting. So this year we're keeping it straight at $4,000. That should be
We weren't
steady.
aware that we had that requirement.
Yeah.
Like they passed it in law. So.
Yeah. And the next thing I'm going to go down to is legal fees. You can see we budgeted last year 42,000. Well, you can see it's way up there at 79,000. And Jim may want to speak to this, but it's basically the FEMA arbitration that we had to go through and a CalPERS issue that we had to deal with. That's basically why that, and you can see what we're budgeting for this year, we brought it way back down because those were one-time kind of extraordinary issues that we had to deal with.
Maybe I should say that, we're gonna face potentially the same thing with the Sandia Creek Bridge or washout. It's not as much, that was 550,000. And just, so we're gonna have to decide, are we gonna arbitrate this or not? Because I've been able to talk to the top guy at Cal OES. And there's a philosophical difference of opinion here. And it's been hard for me to explain, but I think now I've got this down. We are what you call a contract agency. Like, like contract cities, they contract sheriff, they contract fire, they contract roads, whatever. Cal OES's position is that if you're a contract agency, what you pay your contract run to be our district engineer and to work on those FEMA jobs, inspect those FEMA jobs, and all that, that's on us. Because if they grant us $1 million, okay, we get 50,000, more or less, no backup. They give us 5%, and that's for your administrative costs. And so if they compare us to the city of Riverside, okay, or the county of Riverside, they say to the county of Riverside, don't send me an engineer. Well, you already have them. Don't send us an inspector. You've already got them. They're on payroll. You're paying them a salary. So, let us get out the violin that they have to inspect your own job that FEMA is paying for. So when we submit, and this has changed, their position has changed, but this time when we put ours in, essentially everything that could be considered in-house, they said, there's your 5%, that's what you get. And that's what they argued to the arbitrators in Washington. And the arbitrators bought it. Now, what we know about, but what I've been told, I've only done this once, but the arbitration in that process, you can get any answer you want. It depends on what day of the week, do your arbitration or whatever. So if we did it again, they could change their mind. And the people who do that will tell you that just their rulings, in other words, don't impact the next ruling. But under this Mr. Kellings and Cal OES, they are not granting any of the engineering, the design inspection. So this will come back again, but you get 2 appeals, but it's a Cal OES. So they're going to probably change their mind. Okay. So our extras on the Sandia Creek will probably be denied twice, and then we have a decision to arbitrate. So anyway, we did not plug in for that because that's going to be about a year from now before that even goes through the process. And to be honest, I remember Mary Ann, when she was on the board, she said something to me, and I've kept it in the back of my head, that there's something here in this for the state. And as we went through when we got the rejection, okay, I started thinking about that again. Why would the state of California go to Washington, D.C. and say, don't pay our citizens? Unless there's something in it for them. And if you run the way the state gets the money from FEMA, parallel to us, they give us what, 90% up front. So I suspect that 550,000, they've got 90% of it already, because they've been taking all those numbers that we've been submitting. Every time Ron bills us, it goes in the port. They know how much that is. So what I'm wondering is, of that 550, if 500 of it they would have had to return back to FEMA. And now that we lost, Gavin Newsom has $500 million. Anyway, I just wanted to clarify, because I don't want to come back here in 9 months and say, well, we were over budget.
Right.
We were that last year. Anyway,
But Jim, wouldn't the legal fees on that be zero because they lost the last case?
I think so.
I think so too.
Yeah. I think George sent me an email somewhere.
Right. I think we have nothing to lose there. They did such a good job the last time.
No comment.
To be honest, I sat in, maybe 10 really big trials or whatever. And at the end, I was patting your attorney on the back. First, I knew it was, when I got the brief, and it was like Saturday, and I'm sitting on my patio, and I'm like, I gotta read this brief. And it went on and on and on, pages. I was mesmerized. It was like reading. So he called Ward right then and said, who is this guy? This is really, because it's technical stuff, the engineering things, And then watching him, and boy, that federal thing, like they wouldn't allow people to come. They picked and choose who got to actually see it, and you weren't allowed to tape it. It was so weird. And so I just sat over here and I watched it, and only the attorney spoke unless you were a witness. So I had to be there to be a witness, and I had to claim, these papers were that stuff. But then it was Mr. Stein over here who did fabulous, and I told him that at the time. As a witness, there's an art to being a witness. He did really well. And then I found out he had some legal background, so they explained it all. But yeah, I don't think that we should have ever lost back then. The attorney for FEMA was just bumbling, rambling. And they stopped him at one point, said, this isn't even the case. You want to go to your next argument? Hopefully it'll be better. And then we lost. I can't believe it. Anyway, so that's mine, sorry. But that background may come in handy someday.
Okay, we'll move on to if everybody just would look at accounting and audit expenses. We budgeted 27,000. Last year it came in at 30, it came in at 31, almost 32. Again, FEMA is a recurring theme here throughout a lot of this. When you have a FEMA, every year, if you spend a certain dollar amount, you have to do, it's an audit. We have our regular audit, then you got to do an audit within an audit and just break out and audit everything that has to do with FEMA. So that costs about $5,000 to do. So anyway, that was for that. And so we're going back down to 26 because we don't think this fiscal year we're going to have to do a single audit. Next one is meetings and seminars. We increased it this new budget because in speaking with Jim, we know we've got 3 new board members and there are conferences such as CSDA that he would love for you guys to be able to attend those. I know.
And it's local this year, so there's no travel expense.
Yeah, so
Palm Desert, my neighborhood.
No
You don't need a hotel room.
hotel because we're all staying at Jim's.
Yeah.
That's all right. We can sleep outside my neighborhood, except for August.
no. So anyway, that's why we increased the budget over previous year. Then I'm going to really drop down to liability insurance and bonds. If you look at what we budgeted last year, 45, and it came in at 60, almost 60. We knew there was going to be this huge industry-wide increase. So we increased our budget that year. They couldn't tell us exactly what that increase was. So even though we increased our our budget, it still came in very much higher. So, so we don't, so and from what I understand, it's here to stay for, I mean, it's not really gonna go back down,
Never
right? Am
has.
I have the correct understanding? So that's why, we did the COLA to it and brought it to 64,000. So over the past couple of years, insurance has gone extremely high.
It has nothing to do with our rating, our rating is actually getting better.
Yeah,
So we've had very little claims. So it's only because of the industry, it is not going up because of, too big claims.
mhm, yeah. Let's see. Okay, so we were there. So anyway, let me see, is there anything else I want to talk about here? Nothing really of note. If you see even, the new budget, based on last year's actual, we're increasing at 1.5%. So it's very minimal, the effect of all of this. So that's done, and I'd be glad to answer any questions y'all have on this sheet. If we can go ahead and move on to the next sheet, which is, our in-house road maintenance section. That's the first top part where it says road maintenance. Again, same type of format. We're increasing their COLA for their wages. And we came in right in on the annualized the budget and the actual, so we don't need to discuss that. Now, I'm going to drop down to health insurance, field supplies, equipment maintenance, and vehicle repairs. Now, based on what we budgeted last year, we came in higher on quite a few areas there, not tremendously higher, but when one thing, I'll just say field supplies. Since Dustin has been, getting us up to speed, the yard cleaned up, making sure we have supplies that, old tools, things that really needed to be upgraded. So that's why that came in higher. So we're getting our act together up there. Also, equipment maintenance. We had some heavy equipment up there that was sitting, needed a lot of work. Tires on heavy equipment are very expensive. So that's basically why we overran that account there. Vehicle fuel doesn't need any explanation. In fact, it came in pretty good. I was expecting it to be more, but we'll see how the next year falls up. I just did a 7.9% increase for this year. And then the other one was vehicle repairs and maintenance. Our 4 trucks that we use. Again, tires. I think there was a couple of major repairs we had on a door on one and something on the engine on the other. So that's kind of why that increased. So the point of it is, but that was a little high this last year, but they should go back down now. We're not expecting any major blowouts or anything. All our equipment's in pretty darn good shape now. So anyway, you can just peruse those. So if you look at the totals there, again, from what actual is versus what we're budgeting, it's a 1.17 increase. Okay, so that's kind of basically that section. Contract work is the next section. Routine work, you can see is 176 we're budgeting. That is, again, I'll cover that more in the written report. What's making up this section right here, the 993,550, this is it. So we'll go to this next and show you where all those monies are broken out. So that's basically that section.
But that section is a compilation of the written report. I don't know if we want to go into it.
Yeah.
If the 176 is tree trimming, major asphalt repairs, we contract out to PVC paving and this and that. spread over the zones, and then the written report ties to that. And the 750 is the engineering committee. That's our annual roadway rehab projects. And then we have emergency.
Yeah.
So
So mainly the 750 is, what makes most of that up is this planned slurry seal project that we're gonna do. So,
or, some year we might do overlays, maybe pipes, we haven't done that lately. But right now, we've been doing the slurries, mainly to get the road. Because there is what Dave says, it does have 7 years life for the road engineering textbook. But then you also get a restripe and you get the, what do you guys call them? CPM, whatever, the reflectors. So if you remember, probably over the last couple of years, we've been doing like a third of the district. Which spruce things up a little bit.
so the last section here is our capital assets section. I can tell you, Jim already spoke about the long-term planning, staffing, 35,000, you can see there. The other amounts, administrative, field equipment, building improvements, we don't have any specific projects, but we've depleted some of our reserves, so we need to start building them back up. So that's basically it, what's here. And I'm sure whatever is decided will let.
This is really just a contribution to these reserves on the left side. And like building improvements 30, we're down to like 15 cents in there. That's where it came from.
Yeah.
So, but that's an asset, which, you don't always spend that money. You don't get a new coffee machine, you don't get a new. So, this will just kick that back up. So it's a contribution you save.
What I'd like to say is, the second one where it says field equipment, we're asking for 15,000. Right now, we had close to 80,000 in that reserve, but it's going to be used on our new skid steer and the trailer and stuff. So it's depleting that fund, so we need to build it back up. So that's basically that. What I was going to say is the very first page now, if you go down to the expense section, all of what we just spoke about is in this section and kind of summarized. You can just see, where our revenue's going, where our expenses going. And that's all I've got. And I'm glad to answer any questions.
Just another comment, I think, is that the sheriff's fund has an issue with it.
Yeah, we're getting very close to going below the cost of one 40-hour car, Sam. So it needs to be looked at, like the community, because they were talking about it a few years ago.
Right.
And then COVID came and all that, and everybody went on with their life. And probably wise for the community to take a look at that. Yes, maybe not next year, but the year after, that's going to be a big issue with this community. Is how we're going to keep the car.
Gina, you had a question?
I did. So under revenue, all the projected fees that are coming in, this is kind of based on last year, kind of got an idea. What about unexpected revenue that hasn't been accounted for yet?
Such as,
Like gas tax or other things that might be coming in. How much more would that add to it if we got these items next year?
Yeah, that's a good question. Gas tax wouldn't affect this budget at all because there was a May deadline, which we didn't get far enough with the county to meet that. So we're going to begin getting that completed by next May. There's no reason why we can't.
Mm-hmm.
So if that goes through, the county will tell the state we've got 100 miles more road. And that money will begin in July. So it'll be 14 months from right now. And then it would be monthly payments, which will total Our latest estimate is 650,000
Per year.
per year, and that will be split just about in half, which we can use half of that on day-to-day, the budget you're looking at, okay? And the other half we can use, we can only use it's SB1 money, which you've seen freeway projects go to that side.
Mhm.
That can only be used for roadway rehab. And I was just talking to Lon, he asked the same question earlier, and when's that money come down? He said, well, next year, so, we got another year to go. But, 300,000, 350 isn't a lot of money, so probably we'll take roadway rehab and do, instead of 700,000 that year, we'll do, $1 million. And then just have the 350 go into that project. And then, as far as, we're doing pretty good. I mean, maybe we would, maybe like the pipes, that's gonna be a big project for 2 or 3 years. But now with Dustin and his crew, we can do that in-house. So I think probably then that project, because the pipes, the corrugated metal pipe, its life is 45 years. Well, guess what the lose is? It actually is older than that. That's why they're all falling apart. So we could take some of that 350,000 and probably get another. We're gonna need a couple guys. And we're gonna just do that in a big way in-house. But the balance of that, maybe a couple 100,000, throw into roadway rehab. So now we're at $1.2 million every year. So it would make a really big difference if we get that.
Okay, how about some of the insurance settlements that might be coming? Will any of those? No?
It's going the other direction.
Okay.
Because of traffic related car accidents and stuff.
Mhm.
But we don't have a lot really, for 100 miles of road. I think there's like 3, and that's spread over the last 5 years. And there were people getting into car accidents and they try to, because there's a pothole or, those kind of things. But we're not litigating with anyone like the county or something.
Okay.
We might get some money. There are some other areas, there are a few other areas, and I really haven't mentioned it too much. There are a few more rabbits down in that hat as far as the gas tax goes, but they're not as big. And the reason that I say it, and we'll talk about it, because it could interfere. But there's some additional funding that we could probably get. In fact, Warren and I were talking about it. I said, why don't you start reading this, I gave people paper. Because we need, next year, we need to look at these other things. Because there are some revenue sources like the county's getting or that aren't being charged that I believe we can go after that won't come out of the taxpayer. Because to come up with some tax that hasn't been levied, but it all goes to you guys, well, what's the point of that? So, no, we don't do that. And there are some things we could do, but we don't want to do. But there's things like,
Well, and I'll be quick because I don't want to keep going. I was just wondering about, for instance, new construction. The fees, do we get any part of that comes in?
only as it relates to the driveway.
That's it.
We get a developmental impact fee,
Oh, that's right.
but it's basically the top end, it's like $4,000. That's it.
On a new home,
On a new
on a
home.
whole new home is about 4,000.
Okay,
So we do have a fund and that when it gets large enough, I take all that money and transfer it into roadway rehab. So,
Okay.
yeah, that's one of the sources. we
the
do.
reason I'm asking is because just being in the business, lots have sold quite a bit last 2 years.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
seeing more construction permits being pulled. So I was wondering if you're gonna see more of that fund coming in.
Just as it relates to their driveway, which is what, $500 or
It's
something.
it's a $300 fee and a $400 deposit. that they get back.
And then upon completion, the $4,000.
Yeah, before we sign off on their clearance to get
Okay.
clearance, they gotta come in.
Yeah, you might see an increase in that.
That would be nice.
You might see an increase in that.
That's one thing we've been talking about internally, is our permit fee, our rates. Jessica, our rates, you've been saying, I mean, we gotta raise these rates, so maybe in the next month or two, we'll look and see, how long has it been since we adjusted the rates? And my guess is, this was, 20 years ago, and maybe just put CPI on it. but-
Well, I can tell you the counties adjusted their rate.
Have they?
Oh. yeah.
We have.
Oh, yeah. Sure they have.
So
I mean,
that's a really good suggestion.
I mean, I'm not trying to gouge anybody, but I can tell you the county compared to what we paid when we built, it's a lot higher now. The school fee, everything.
Okay.
The only other thing is that you can't use the gas tax for the sheriff.
No.
We can't.
And I think that's important, so even if we get that, I mean, when we get that, it doesn't offset, what we have to spend for the sheriff's fund.
So all the gas tax, those things would go to road improvements? Okay, okay. And how about the development impact? Would that go to the sheriff, or does that always have to go to road improvements?
Wait a minute, that's a good point. We're just transferring it to roadway rehab, because it's like our capital.
Mhm.
That isn't tied to that.
Good.
Diff fee, you can use it any way you want, I use it for parks and all kinds of stuff. But it's the same, well, I know, but, I'm guessing that, we could give you, that could, it's like, you just transfer with 60,000?
I have about 65,000.
Yeah. So that would help, but is
Not
that,
the answer.
you don't know. So anyway, we'll look into that.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, then that concludes our agenda K workshop. Alrighty, moving on. Agenda item L, Mr. Emmons, agreement with the
The
department.
final budget item, this is, at the prior meeting, a month or so ago, to approve the contract with the, Ripley County Sheriff. This is the contract for the next fiscal year with the California Highway Patrol, which we just use on as needed hourly basis. So this would be a motion second and, a roll call vote. So there's no real change except the rate, of course, went up.
Right. Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, Bowman.
Aye.
Carol.
Aye.
Yellisandri.
Aye.
Lawson.
Aye.
Roberts. Aye.
Okay.
Unanimously approved. Thank you, Jen. All righty, moving on smartly. And conflict of interest.
Yeah, we'll give Jim a break.
Yeah. Unrest that books.
The Political Reform Act requires all public agencies to adopt a conflict of interest code. And what we're doing here is we basically just adopt the code that they give us in the code of California regulations. And basically the code dictates to us who has to fill out these forms 700, I'm sure you're well aware of it, that, so that people know, it's a transparency law, people know that whether or not there's a conflict, whether you're voting on something, whether you have a financial interest in it or not. So it requires every other year, every even year to update it, or at least take a look at it. I don't think we had any changes this year, but we just re-adopted kind of as a perfunctory process. So that's what we're doing here.
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor, Bowman.
Aye.
Carol.
Aye.
Yellisandri. Lawson.
Aye.
Roberts, aye. Unanimously approved, thank you. Okay, moving on, Mr. Stein, Buena Vista.
All right, thank you. So for Buena Vista, I'll start with the environmental process. So as we've been discussing for the last couple months, as of last time, I think it was a couple months ago, we got the regional water quality board. So that permit has been in the hat for a while now. And then as of recently, within the last week, we just received our CDFW. That timeline attached, and just like with San Diego Creek, they had to issue an outlaw permit, meaning they had no comments basically within that timeframe. So we got 2 out of 3 of them out, and as I mentioned in the last meeting, we're still waiting on the Army Corps of Engineers. That is going to be the last obstacle, and then we're fully ready to go. Their timeline, we expect some kind of a response, hopefully the end of May. They've been dragging their feet, but we're just at the whim how the Army Corps of Engineers goes on that. So there's 1 more left, so we are seeing progress on that at least, which is a good thing. We're reaching out to them pretty much weekly, sending emails. So we're at the top of the list now because they're actually responding to our emails right away now. So that just means we're at the top of the list. So they're just trying to get through that last obstacle now. Once we get the Army Corps, we are basically ready. As you know, we have a contractor on board for that. So, and that'll segue into my next statement. So we're, again, end of May, we're expecting some kind of response by the Army Corps. So fingers crossed, they don't have any comments on that.
Okay.
So that's the environmental portion of that. If anyone has any questions on that portion.
Okay.
All right. No, actually, there's 1 more item for, for Buena Vista. If you go, in the agenda items, we have the agenda report for the, I've been reaching out to the contractor basically, and we've been, as we discussed, we kind of started a negotiation process, been going on for the last like month and a half basically, based on the timeline from the environmental permitting. It's been about 9 months since we got their bid. So as you know, and as discussed, construction prices have been going up. Normally that's going to happen. The construction prices are going to go up, but even now with, as we've discussed again, the material shortages and just everything. One of the big items that is affected by that is pipes. We had that same issue with San Diego Creek. Basically, pipe prices are just going really high right now. So it's been hard to estimate that. But basically, so we've reached out to Southland Paving, who was the low bid on the project. Had them go through some new numbers. So the original bid you can see was about $425,000. So based on they gave us some updated prices, and it looks like it's about to be an increase of about 104,000. I ran this analysis based on the Caltrans Construction Cost Index, which is the typical standard based on what rates are, what construction prices were back in July 2021 when this project was bid versus now. They're close to that. I think the cost index went up to about, it was like 17% difference in that time frame. They're a little bit above that, but you got to notice that Caltrans is mostly roadway. They're mostly focused on roadway. Pipes are a small portion of that. So because there's storm drain involved, it's a little bit higher. But the biggest thing that we want to look at here is the second lowest bidder came in at about $544,965 back in July. So they are still below that second lowest bidder at $529,389. So we kind of discussed in the committee meeting wouldn't be worth it to go back out to bid because there's no way we're going to get anything lower than that. We're still below that second lowest bidder. So basically, we came to the conclusion that this is a reasonable increase. They're not trying to pull one over on us. Basically, it's just how the construction costs are right now. So basically, this agenda report is saying to update the contract amount to $529,389. That will allow the to get that price locked in. So once these environmental permits come in, we'll be good to go. I know it's been a long process.
Will that price be locked in?
So right now, that's what we're gonna have to, I think they said it's in our language, how we write it for them. So I have the negotiated price, now I gotta get them to kind of sign and lock it in. Originally it was 180 days, their first price, so I'm gonna try and stick to that exact thing.
Okay.
But again, also, if you look at the recommendations, we have a 10% contingency that we're also throwing in for any unforeseen conditions if anything were to happen. But we're locking that price in right now. But we are head around the corner for this environmental permit.
Well, we've said that before on environmental permits, so,
Yeah.
and that was San Diego Creek, and a year later, it hadn't been done, so
Yeah.
that's why I asked.
No, I fully understand, so yes, but this is, if you remember, we did the same thing for San Diego, once we had that price, we stuck with that one. So this is the step we're on right now, I know, it's the same process, but, you know, at least we have the contract on board right now, I mean, if we would have waited till we had the environmental permits, this would have been the price regardless, so it's not necessarily lost money, this is the price we took this project.
I think it's a good idea, I just wanted to know what we were facing.
Yep, so we will get that locked in price, again, it was 180 days originally, so we'll try and get them to lock in that price best we can, but that's gonna be, but as long as I get this, authorization that authorize this amount, that's when I can work with the contractor to get the exact date.
Ron, I think at one time we were talking about the possibility of repurchasing the pipe, be able to get that locked in. Is there any action on that, or is that necessary to complete?
So I guess the first step would be accepting the negotiation with this, and we can talk about securing that pipe, because as we've seen in San Diego Creek again, these pipe lead times, and that's part of the reason why the price is so high, these lead times are high, so at the engineering committee meeting, we discussed basically, what if we can have, and this is typical in engineering contractors, called a procurement period. So we can have the pipe secured, the pipe ordered basically, and see if they can just secure that on site. You know, the contractor could say he has a risk of leaving it there, but we'd have to talk about that, but they secure materials on site all the time. And we're not talking about some little 18-inch pipe, we're talking large.
Pickup truck wouldn't do it.
No, I don't think so. Pickup truck can almost fit inside it. But no, so yeah, that is a good conversation to have, and we can talk about them. But the big thing, and Chuck, you actually brought this concern to me about whether the district would own that pipe or if the contractor bailed on it, which, you know, fingers crossed, and I don't want to talk about that, but they could say they own that pipe, so we would put language in our specification that says, hey, this is, you know, this is district owned material, basically, to cover ourselves with that. But that's again a conversation I have to have with them. It's not something I can force upon them, because it is, contract hasn't technically started yet. The good thing, I guess, the silver lining good thing is there's no fee money involved, so we would have no issue with starting. It's all about when the district wants to start the project. It would be the pipe cost, maybe a little bit of mobilization cost would be included in that. So it's definitely a conversation. It's in their interest. So I don't see why they would say no to it, right? Because they're locked in at this price. If prices go up, you know, it's kind of tough on that. But that's why we want to work with them best we can and just get that pipe on site, basically. So it is a conversation we can have. Yes, that answers the question.
Okay,
So
motion to approve in terms of the updated bid, 529,389.40.
So I'll make a motion to approve it.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor, Bowman?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Gillison?
Aye.
Austin?
Aye.
Roberts, aye. Thank you very much, everyone.
That's both recommendations.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Alrighty, you're still on the floor, Mr. Stein.
all right, next to future roadway projects. And again, I get super excited about a lot of this stuff, so if I'm ever talking too fast, I know I have that, New York, I talk real fast, so someone please tell me to slow down. So get used to this, forum as much as I can, so just please let me know if I am talking too fast. So as far as, the future roadway projects, the last couple months, I think last meeting I discussed that, actually the last couple months, we, talked with the committee about, narrowing down roadways based on an anticipated roadway budget. Of course, the roadway budget wasn't set, and it's not set yet. I seen the numbers on the screen now, so we're getting towards setting that. But, what we kind of discussed, the point of these discussions was kind of to narrow down what roadways we want to target. And I provided the committee the last, 2 months, basically, what a typical budget breakdown would look like and how that's broken out through the zones, basically what percentage goes into each zone. In line with the typical things we've done in past years. And again, this was just kind of to narrow down these roadways and to allow us to, proceed with the design and get more input on that. Again, nothing set in stone until I actually get a set of plans. Then I would actually take that plan with the limit set, and it would have to go to the board to approve the set of plans and then authorize them to go to bid. So right now it's just kind of discussing what roads you want to target, but nothing set in stone. I can still, based on the difference in budget, if there is a difference in budget, I can change our limits back and forth to make it match that budget basically. So now it's just proceeding with getting those roads narrowed down, which is the general consensus basically on the Sandia Creek detour route. That's something that we said we're gonna put in there almost 100%, I believe. So, and the rest of it is just, the rest of that money in that budget will be the slurry and the design and inspection costs that would be associated with that. So I showed that budget right there, and I think we have a pretty good narrowed down the roadways for the most part. So it's basically just a matter of time of when we get that design going, and when we get the design going, get plans ready and start taking that out to bid. But again, we don't have the budget completely set yet, but we can start doing some of the preliminary work, get moving on that. So when that budget is set and we have that fit the next fiscal year's money, we can start ready and get that out to bid as soon as we possibly can, or maybe wait until we want to do that. So give us the flexibility basically. So that's basically my conclusion on that.
He said it did about 5 years ago at PMS study. Are you still using that?
So that's definitely a good topic to discuss. It's actually 7 years ago, which was in 2016, we did that report.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. I guess, yes, we are still using that as a guideline. I wouldn't want, it's not a waste right now because it does show us what we've done. And I've kind of put together a few exhibits, which they used to be up over here, but now we got a new door there. So it looks like it's something different. But I've been putting together exhibits based on roadway projects we've done. And I've presented that to the committee as well since then. And it shows every road that we've touched in that time frame that can be kind of taken out of that list. And I like rated a estimated update based on construction costs throughout the years of roadways that we haven't touched yet. So that's all there. So it is still a good tool, but I will say right now, and as Jim mentioned a little bit earlier, a slurry seal gives you about 7 years of extra life.
Right.
Well, it's been 7 years since that analysis. Right. So anything that was slurried after that, it's, it could be time for another. So it's a running process. So it's outdated. It's still a good tool to use. I'm not going to say it's not helping us at all. It's definitely getting us there, but it is definitely outdated at this time.
Did you have a question?
No, I was just saying the street down by us is another detour route. And when the gate goes up, that'll probably be one to look at. And it's just down the street from us. Saying El Prado should be on the part of El Prado, the south side.
That concludes mine. I'm not sure if anyone has any other questions.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All righty, moving on. Agenda item P, traffic and enforcement matters. Mr. Sturley.
Thank you. We have some short presentation tonight. Go ahead. So our update on our sign is we have it still on Sandia Creek doing speed, but we have a new project that we'll be using it for, and that'll be to let people know about this gate that's coming. So we're working out that message, and we'll work with Dustin to get that installed and stuff like that, so we can start letting them know this is coming. Then after that, we'll have stop signs at the cruise, so it'll move away. So we'll keep it the same place. County did some refreshing and striping along Rancho Calandulus Road in our area, so that's nice to know. This is some graffiti we turned into them. San Diego County, as you know, is working on the gate. This is where they're at, is the pictures of today to show you what it looks like. They have the post in place and they have the turnaround sign in place. Their target date is May 28th. So we worked with the county and Dustin got the sign installed with them, and as well as 3 more that we have on our set of roads. Next picture. That's a picture of the sample of the signs that are up now that you'll see, letting people know this is coming. So gain access or go home. These are just ongoing things, just as always, the things we've been working on over the last few weeks. Next time. This is the bargain of the year, you guys.
It's still there.
It's gone now. It's gone now. That's the new look. There's your chance. Project one, we added a mailbox access off the Los Gatos and Paso. Dustin will speak more about that one. And project number two is the all-way stop request, which you guys approved the first reading of, and the second reading is for tonight. So give you an update on those. And when that happens, then we'll go ahead and get those signs installed. We're working with a contractor that's local in the area, so we can kind of coordinate the timing of it so that they don't make a trip up just for this one, save some money. That's that one. And now I'll ask any questions that you have.
Well, there's only one gate for, on San Diego Creek. They only have one gate, not two gates.
No, it's two.
It will be.
There will be.
No, there's two. There's another, yeah.
But either way, it'll be a gate for either direction, so you have to have access, you gotta have access to one or both, you don't get. Now. You get trapped.
Questions? Okay, very good. I think, thank you. Okay, moving on, agenda item Q, Mr. Ammons.
This is the second reading and adoption of the ordinance, which allows the stop sign at San Diego and Cruz. So the appropriate motion would be to, well, we actually, the president needs to call the public hearing to order, please.
Okay.
Just saying, I call the meeting, or the public hearing to order.
Okay, I call the public meeting to order.
And then is there anyone who wishes to speak?
Okay,
Go
is-
ahead.
that's okay. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak at this time on this subject matter?
So you can close the public hearing.
Okay,
Closed.
public hearing is closed.
And if there's any debate by the board,
Any debate by the board?
No.
None?
if not, the appropriate motion would be to introduce ordinance 2202 for second reading. The public hearing has been conducted before the ordinance was introduced by title only, and further reading was waived. And the motion would be to adopt ordinance 2202.
Motion to approve. So moved. Second,
Second.
roll call, Bowman.
Aye.
Carroll.
Aye.
Alessandri.
Aye.
Rawson.
Aye.
Roberts, aye. Unanimously approved. Thank you, Jan. Okay. Agenda item R, road maintenance field crew report. Mr.
Evening, everybody.
Aye.
Sorry for missing you guys last time. CHP decided to throw us something exciting. We had a tree fall over north of San Diego Creek on El Prado. As you can see here, it was covering the entire roadway. Kind of hard to tell, but this tree at the base was almost 4 feet in width. We actually had to have our chipper on site, our every saw that we have, and then some, as well as our skip loader that's now been traded in. This was pretty much an all-night task. We came in here when you guys had already concluded the meeting, but we got this moved out of the way and all cleaned up. So that was our excuse for not being there. One thing that I wanted to get a chance to say at the last meeting was that we have a new employee, TJ. He's joined us, and he's been a great asset to the team. I just want to thank you all for this opportunity. I'm very happy to be here, and I can see a very long career. So thank you. We had a small drain project on Del Oro. Some of you may know. It's a very high flooding area, as well as the entirety of Duluth. This specific pipe is in overflow for an adjacent culvert. It experiences quite a high volume of water. As you can see in the picture to the left, It was completely clogged. And because of how full it was and damaged the pipe was, the road above it was starting to settle. So we decided to take advantage of this, and we used some of our pipe that we had in-house already. We're able to purchase 2 sections of pipe in a time where it's extremely difficult to get pipe. This project took us only 2 days. We replaced the culvert with new HDPE. That's pretty much the new standard, and it was a very successful project. So I'm hoping to alleviate some of the water flow that ends up going onto your roadway, damaging our roadways. And hopefully we'll be able to see that this next rain season. That's just a finished product. Is the patch going across the road. And the right, you can see some of our riprap that we had placed. It was donated to us by Rancho Water on their project from on El Calamar. And so as Steve had previously mentioned, we had done a small pathway from the mailboxes on Carancho at Los Gatos to alleviate some of the pressure that some of the drivers are having to exit the mailboxes. So as you can see, we cut it out, graded it, added a base material, and the next picture is the finalized picture, which has been paved. This was all done in-house by us, and another successful project. It seems to be used quite a bit right now, so it's definitely helping out. From what I've heard, and the feedback that I've gotten already is people are very pleased with the ability to pull out and not fear so much for their lives there.
Yes.
So,
Did you do the asphalt replica or placement in-house as well?
yes, sir. It was all placed by hand. Usually we would pave that, but we were able to do it by hand. It turned out pretty well.
Looks great.
Yeah, thank you very much.
That's very good.
And currently throughout the month right now, this is really our only window of opportunity to hit some of these heavy areas that are saturated with weeds. This year has been really bad. And we were able to, because we purchased the skid steer, we have a month rental free or provided by Quinn. And so we utilized a little bit of that here, mowing certain areas to make sure that we were keeping up with vegetation that's been growing in your roadways. And just since it's been a conversation topic, I've heard kind of a few things here and there about fire hazards. When it comes to mowing, we do really only have a very small window available to us to mow safely. Like the county typically they'll mow around the same time as us, and they usually have a water truck that follows them. What they use is it's basically considered a fire watch. And in California, unfortunately, because of how dry we are in the desert and how dangerous it is, it's really the only way to get by. So on our trucks, as well as the equipment, we always have a minimum of 5 fire extinguishers. And then our follow vehicle, which is considered the fire watch, that's the person that basically sits back from the vehicle that's mowing and just watches out for anything that could potentially be a fire hazard or any sparks or anything like that. So we have a 100-gallon water tank that's usually on the trucks, and like I said before, 5 fire extinguishers. And then that vehicle also provides a bit of traffic control as well. And I think that concludes everything for presentation.
Any questions? Thank you
I'm
very
glad
much.
to hear, I am glad to hear you were working on those weeds,
The
really severe this year.
it's very bad. So yeah, it's been tough on us.
Okay, thank you very much. Righty, committee reports. Number 1, the engineering committee did meet on May the 10th, at which time we did approve our April 12th minutes. And of course, this evening, Mr. Stein, Lindgren, Emmons, and Wyatt presented their updates. Last item I'd like to bring up is that there is going to be a rotation of the engineering committee directors effective, though I think we're going to be changing the date, effective June 7th or 6th, the next engineering meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
We'll post that.
Okay, alrighty. I will be departing as the chairperson, starting at that time. And Mr. Bowman here will reside as chairperson. And Gina Rawson will be joining the engineering committee effective during that part of June there. So just wanted to keep everybody informed on that. And obviously a very good group of individuals, very informative, and you already know a lot, Gina, so so that'll be an added plus for the curriculum. So thank you very much. Chuck, anything you wanted to?
Yes, a great, thank you for all the hard work you put into the engineering committee. It's evident by the results, and I've been amazed at your organization.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, we got a good crew of people over here. These are the people with all the answers and all the skills to do what we need to do for all the folks up here. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to the finance committee report.
Well, I'd like to not say anything because we've heard so much about it. I just have one item
Okay.
to tell you, that is that on June 8th, we will be interviewing 3 proposals for auditor for the CSD. And Jim, well, I don't know, a wide array of ads, et cetera. And we did get 3. Leaf and Coal is one. There are 2 others. I haven't seen them yet, but I just got this evening the RFP proposals. We will interview them on the 8th. And then we will bring back a recommendation to the board at the next board meeting. And at that time, we will ask the individual we are recommending to come to the board meeting, and therefore you all can address and interview him and speak with him. That's the only other thing I want to do. Oh, one last thing. We have a tremendous increase in our interest rate that we're getting. It went from 0.2 to 0.4. Not many people can say that they've had a 50% increase. Or is it 100%? 100%. Yeah. So I just wanted to let you know that we're expecting that to increase somewhat. Probably not
Better up than down, right?
well, maybe.
Well, congratulations on that. Thank you. All righty, and in terms of the legislative committee, SB 415, the district is currently working on a second legal opinion with our legal representative, Brian, what's his last name? Okay, so that's the update in terms of that committee. So moving on smartly, the general manager's report, Mr. Andrews.
Been doing a lot of reporting and sorry.
Monterey, California. It was very educational. In addition to a number of different vendors there, BB&K was there, for example, and a lot of networking that you're able to do. They're definitely very worthwhile. They're, take a good look at the list of courses that you might be interested in. I believe some of you've already taken, if you had, you would have been able to do so at the conference, and that was the harassment and
Ethics.
ethics class as
So
well.
they have one afternoon, we blow it all out.
Right, right,
And
exactly.
is that all in here or where?
We'll email it to you,
Oh,
it just
okay.
came out, so, they put together a little brochure and fancy. There may be some, discussion that it's coming, but I just got an email this week, that we're taking registration and stuff. Sure.
But definitely worthwhile.
You said you went for the whole 3 days?
Yes, we did.
Oh, you
Yes. So it was definitely very educational, so definitely give it some consideration.
Okay.
Okay.
The motion that it would be okay. Because for board members, they're supposed to get it approved by the board. That they can attend. Go.
We've never done that.
Doesn't have to-
Yeah. But we're supposed to, do it, that's the thing.
Oh, really? Oh,
We should, yeah, there's just a motion second that any board, that you as a whole board will authorize any board member that wishing to attend to work with staff and make it happen. So in other words, the law is designed that the board needs to know when other board members are spending money, you know. So if you just made that, then blanket, unless somebody cares that. Sorry. Sorry, Chuck, they decided you can't.
You have to say,
Well, it's okay for everything but Chuck to go.
We could also bring back a policy, but I think a blanket motion, if you want to do that, to authorize, attendance at the CSDA conference would be appropriate.
okay, so a motion to approve a blanket authorization
For all the board members.
for all the board members.
For each individual. Some may not wish to.
That's true.
That's
Okay.
okay.
For one or all.
One or all, okay, in terms of participating in the CSA annual conference. Is there a motion to approve? Second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call, Bowman?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Alexander? Rawson?
Aye.
Roberts? Aye. Aye, covered.
Yeah, we'll put it in the minutes.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Nothing for-
Last but not least, you, legal, council members, Mr. Simmons.
I don't have much tonight, but we thought we were going to have gone through mediation on the State Farm case by now. But that has been delayed because of the schedule of the mediator. It's supposed to be, do you remember the date? I think it's next week.
Or is
Oh,
it
is it?
next week?
I think it's next week sometime. And you have it on your calendar. So we'll have to come back next board meeting to talk to you about further authorization, maybe going to closed session.
Righty, thank you, everyone. This meeting is now adjourned.